You will never be good enough for my son.
Victoria Wellington's voice cut through the marble hallway like a knife. Her cold blue eyes burned with hatred as she stared down at the young black woman standing before her. "Pack your things and get out of my house immediately." Nia Thompson didn't flinch. At 26, she had faced worse than an angry rich woman throwing a tantrum. She adjusted her cleaning uniform and looked Victoria straight in the eye. "I'm not going anywhere, Mrs. Wellington. Your son hired me to do a job, and I intend to do it." Victoria's face turned red with rage. For 30 years, she had successfully driven away every black woman who dared to get close to her billionaire son, James. She had used money, threats, and psychological warfare to protect what she called the family's reputation. But this cleaning woman was different. This one wasn't afraid. James Wellington stood frozen in the doorway, watching the two most important women in his life face off in his own home. At 38, he had never been able to love freely because of his mother's racism. But something about Nia made him want to fight for the first time in his life. The battle for James's heart was about to begin, and Victoria had no idea she was about to meet her match. If you believe love should conquer hate and that everyone deserves respect regardless of their background, please like and subscribe. This story will show you the power of standing up for what's right. James Wellington stood at the window of his penthouse office, looking out at the Manhattan skyline without really seeing it. At 38, he was one of the youngest billionaires in America, having built his technology empire from the ground up. He had everything money could buy: mansions, private jets, luxury cars, but he had never experienced true love. Not because he couldn't find it, but because his mother made sure he never kept it. The memories played in his mind like a painful movie he couldn't turn off. There was Keisha, the brilliant lawyer he had met 3 years ago. They had dated for 6 months before his mother Victoria started her campaign of psychological warfare. She would make snide comments about Keisha's hair, question her education, and find ways to humiliate her at family gatherings. When that didn't work, Victoria hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on Keisha's family, then leaked embarrassing information to the press. Keisha left, unable to handle the constant attacks on her dignity. Before Keisha, there was Simone, a successful doctor who had captured James's heart with her intelligence and compassion. Victoria had pretended to be supportive at first, then slowly poisoned their relationship. She would call James with fake emergencies whenever he had dates planned with Simone. She spread rumors among their social circle that Simone was only interested in James's money. When Simone tried to confront Victoria directly, his mother played the victim, claiming she was being attacked and that Simone was showing her true aggressive nature. The relationship crumbled under the constant pressure. There had been others: Angela, the artist who created beautiful sculptures that Victoria accidentally destroyed during a dinner party; Maya, the teacher who loved children and dreamed of starting a family with James, until Victoria convinced him that Maya was trying to trap him with pregnancy; Jasmine, the entrepreneur who was building her own successful business, until Victoria spread lies about her company's finances and destroyed her reputation in their industry. Each time, James had watched helplessly as his mother systematically destroyed his happiness. He told himself he was protecting these women by letting them go, that they were better off without the Wellington family drama. But deep down, he knew he was a coward. He was afraid to stand up to the woman who had raised him alone after his father's death when he was 12. Victoria Wellington was a master manipulator who had perfected her craft over decades. She knew exactly which buttons to push, which fears to exploit, which insecurities to target. She had convinced herself that she was protecting her son from women who only wanted his money. But the truth was darker. Victoria couldn't stand the thought of sharing James's love with anyone, especially not with black women who challenged her sense of racial superiority. The Wellington mansion in the Hamptons was Victoria's kingdom, and she ruled it with an iron fist. The house had been in the family for 3 generations, a massive estate with 22 rooms, perfectly manicured gardens, and a staff of 15 people. Victoria had carefully chosen each employee to maintain what she called the appropriate atmosphere. Most of the staff were white or light-skinned immigrants who were grateful for their jobs and unlikely to challenge her authority. When it came to romantic relationships, Victoria had a simple strategy: identify the woman's weaknesses, exploit them relentlessly, and make her life so miserable that she would leave willingly. She was particularly skilled at playing the innocent victim whenever James questioned her behavior. "I'm just trying to protect you," she would say with tears in her eyes. "These women don't love you for who you are. They only see dollar signs." James's phone buzzed, interrupting his dark thoughts. His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Wellington, your mother is on line 1. She says it's urgent." James sighed and picked up the phone. "Hello, Mother." "James, darling, we have a situation at the house." Victoria's voice was smooth and controlled. the same tone she used when she was planning something. I had to let go of our cleaning service. They were becoming unreliable, and I caught one of them going through my jewelry box. That's unfortunate, but I'm sure you can find a replacement service easily enough. Actually, I've already found someone, a small local company that comes highly recommended. They're sending someone today to start immediately. I wanted to make sure you knew, in case you decide to come home this weekend. James felt a familiar knot in his stomach. His mother never made decisions about the household staff without ulterior motives. Mother, what aren't you telling me? Nothing, darling. I'm simply trying to maintain our home properly. You know how important it is to have trustworthy people around us. After hanging up, James couldn't shake the feeling that his mother was planning something. He decided to drive out to the Hamptons that evening, partly to see what Victoria was up to, and partly because he needed to escape the city for a while. The Wellington estate looked magnificent in the golden light of the setting sun. James parked his black Tesla in the circular driveway and walked through the front doors into the marble foyer. The house was quiet except for the soft sound of classical music coming from his mother's sitting room. James, darling. Victoria appeared at the top of the grand staircase, elegant as always in her designer dress and perfectly styled silver hair. At 62, she was still a beautiful woman who commanded attention wherever she went. I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow. I finished my meetings early and decided to drive out. How's the new cleaning person working out? Victoria's smile flickered for just a moment, so quickly that most people would have missed it. But James knew his mother's expressions well enough to catch the brief flash of something that looked almost like uncertainty. She's adequate, Victoria said carefully. Very thorough in her work. Perhaps a bit too independent for my taste, but I suppose that's what we get these days. As if summoned by their conversation, the sound of a vacuum cleaner started up from the library down the hall. James found himself curious about this cleaning person who had managed to make his mother seem less than completely confident. I think I'll go introduce myself, James said, walking toward the library. Oh, that's not necessary, Victoria called after him, hurrying to catch up. She's very busy, and I don't want to interrupt her work. But James was already at the library door. He knocked gently and opened it to find a young black woman efficiently cleaning the expensive Persian rug. She looked up as he entered, and James felt his breath catch in his throat. She was beautiful, but not in the polished, artificial way of the women in his social circle. Her beauty was natural and confident. She had warm brown skin, intelligent dark eyes, and natural hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She wore a simple white t-shirt and jeans with cleaning gloves, but she carried herself with a dignity that would have been impressive in any setting. You must be Mr. Wellington, she said, turning off the vacuum and extending her hand. I'm Nia Thompson. Your mother hired me this morning. James shook her hand, noting her firm grip and direct eye contact. Nice to meet you, Nia. How are you finding the house? It's beautiful, she said honestly. A lot of history in these walls. Your mother mentioned that your family has lived here for 3 generations. That's right. My great-grandfather built this place in 1924. James found himself genuinely interested in talking to her, something that hadn't happened in a long time. Are you from around here? Brooklyn, originally. I moved out to Long Island about 2 years ago. I'm working my way through nursing school, and cleaning houses helps pay the bills. Victoria appeared in the doorway, her face tight with disapproval. Nia, dear, you really shouldn't be bothering Mr. Wellington with your personal life. He's a very busy man. It's no bother at all, James said quickly. I asked the questions. Nia looked between mother and son, clearly sensing the tension but not backing down. I should get back to work. I want to make sure I finish the library before I leave tonight. As James walked away from the library, he couldn't stop thinking about Nia. There was something different about her, something that made him want to know more. Unlike his mother's usual employees, Nia didn't seem intimidated by the wealth around her or eager to impress him. She was simply herself, confident, genuine, and refreshingly real. That night at dinner, Victoria tried to fill the conversation with gossip about their social circle and complaints about various household matters. But James found his thoughts drifting to the young woman cleaning downstairs. He made a mental note to be around the house more often while Nia was working. He told himself it was just curiosity, but deep down, he knew it was something more dangerous. The beginning of genuine interest in a woman his mother would never approve of. For the first time in years, James Wellington was thinking about defying his mother's wishes. He didn't know yet that this decision would lead to the biggest battle of his life, one that would force him to choose between the woman who raised him and the woman who might finally teach him how to love. Over the next 2 weeks, James found himself making excuses to spend more time at the Hampton house. He told himself it was because he needed a break from the city, but the truth was that he looked forward to his brief conversations with Nia. She came 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And each time, James discovered something new about her that impressed him. Nia wasn't just intelligent. She was wise beyond her 26 years. When James mentioned his stress about a difficult business deal, she listened thoughtfully and offered a perspective he hadn't considered. When he complained about feeling isolated despite being surrounded by people, she talked about the difference between being alone and being lonely. She had a way of cutting through the superficial conversations he was used to and getting to the heart of things. "You know," Nia said one Wednesday afternoon as she dusted the books in James's study, "my grandmother used to clean houses like this when I was little. She always said that wealthy people had the most beautiful things, but often the saddest faces." James looked up from his laptop. Did she think that was because of the money? No, she thought it was because money can buy everything except the things that really matter. Love, friendship, peace of mind. Those things have to be earned and built, not purchased. Their conversations were interrupted whenever Victoria appeared, which happened with increasing frequency. James's mother seemed to have developed an uncanny ability to show up whenever he was talking to Nia. She would find reasons to redirect Nia to other parts of the house or assign her additional tasks that required immediate attention. "Nia, dear," Victoria would say with a false sweetness that made James's skin crawl, "I noticed you missed a spot in the guest bathroom. Could you attend to that right away? We're expecting important visitors this weekend." Nia would simply nod and gather her cleaning supplies without complaint, but James could see the flash of annoyance in her eyes. She was too professional to argue, but she wasn't fooled by Victoria's tactics. Victoria's campaign against Nia started subtly, as it always did. She began by criticizing Nia's work in small ways that seemed reasonable on the surface, but were designed to undermine her confidence. "I'm not sure this cleaning service is working out," Victoria mentioned to James over breakfast one Thursday morning. "The girl seems thorough enough, but she lacks attention to detail. Yesterday I found dust on the top shelf of the bookcase in the library. Did you tell her about it?" "Of course, and she fixed it immediately. But the point is, she should have seen it herself. Quality help notices these things without being told." James frowned. He had been in the library when Nia was cleaning, and he had watched her carefully dust every surface, including the top shelves. Either his mother was lying, or she had deliberately put dust there after Nia finished cleaning. The psychological warfare escalated when Victoria realized that James was developing genuine feelings for Nia. She started leaving expensive items in places where Nia would have to move them while cleaning, then checking to see if anything was missing. When nothing disappeared, Victoria tried a different approach. "I had to count my jewelry twice today," Victoria announced at dinner one Friday evening. "I could have sworn I was missing a bracelet, but it turned out to be in a different box. Still, it made me nervous. You can never be too careful with strangers in the house. Nia isn't a stranger, Mother. She's been working here for 3 weeks. 3 weeks is nothing, James. You don't really know someone until you've seen how they behave when they think no one is watching." But James was watching, and what he saw impressed him more each day. Nia treated the house and everything in it with respect and care. She was gentle with the antique furniture, careful with the expensive artwork, and meticulous in her cleaning. More importantly, she treated everyone she encountered with dignity, from the gardener to the cook to Victoria herself, despite the increasingly hostile treatment she received. The breaking point came on a rainy Wednesday in October. James was working in his study when he heard raised voices from the kitchen. He walked downstairs to find Victoria standing over Nia, who was on her hands and knees cleaning up what appeared to be broken pieces of a crystal vase. "This is exactly what I was talking about," Victoria was saying, her voice cold with fury. "Carelessness and disrespect for other people's property. That vase was a wedding gift from my late mother-in-law. It's irreplaceable." Nia looked up from the floor, her face calm, but her eyes flashing with anger. "Mrs. Wellington, I didn't break this vase. It was already cracked when I found it on the counter. I was trying to move it safely when it fell apart in my hands." "How convenient," Victoria sneered. "First you claim you didn't see the crack, now you claim it was already broken. Do you expect me to believe such obvious lies?" James stepped into the kitchen. "What's going on here?" "Your cleaning girl has destroyed a priceless family heirloom and is now lying about it," Victoria said, playing the role of wounded victim perfectly. "I'm afraid this is the last straw. She'll have to go." Nia stood up slowly, pieces of crystal still in her gloved hands. She looked directly at James, and he could see the hurt and frustration in her eyes, but also something else, a quiet dignity that refused to be broken by false accusations. "Mr. Wellington," Nia said calmly, "I understand if you need to let me go, but I want you to know that I have never broken anything in this house, and I have never lied to you or your mother. If Mrs. Wellington says I'm not suitable for this job, then perhaps she's right. Some situations just aren't meant to work out." Victoria smiled triumphantly, recognizing the resignation in Nia's voice. This was how it always went. Eventually, every woman gave up and walked away, unable to handle the constant stress and humiliation. But as Nia started to remove her cleaning gloves, James made a decision that surprised everyone in the room, including himself. "Wait," he said firmly. "Nia, don't go anywhere. Mother, I need to speak with you privately." Victoria's smile faltered. "James, dear, I don't think that's necessary. The situation is quite clear. The situation is that you've been trying to make Nia's life miserable since the day she started working here," James said, his voice steady, but loud enough for Nia to hear. "I've watched you criticize her work, question her integrity, and now accuse her of breaking something that was probably already damaged. This isn't about a vase, Mother. This is about something else entirely." For the first time in James's adult life, he saw genuine surprise in his mother's eyes. Victoria had always been able to manipulate him into going along with her schemes, but something had changed. Her usual tactics weren't working. "James, you're being ridiculous," Victoria said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "I'm simply trying to maintain standards in our home." "No, you're trying to drive away another woman I care about," James said, the words surprising him as much as they did Victoria and Nia. "But this time, I'm not going to let you do it." The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of rain against the windows. Nia stared at James with wide eyes, clearly shocked by his public declaration. Victoria's face went through a series of emotions: surprise, anger, and finally, a cold calculation that James recognized from childhood. "I see," Victoria said slowly. "So this is how it's going to be. You're going to choose a cleaning girl over your own mother." "I'm choosing honesty over manipulation," James replied. "I'm choosing to stand up for someone who deserves better treatment than what you've been giving her." Victoria straightened her shoulders and looked at both James and Nia with the expression of someone declaring war. "Very well, but don't say I didn't warn you about the consequences of poor judgment." She walked out of the kitchen, leaving James and Nia alone with the broken crystals scattered across the floor. The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of everything that had just happened. "You didn't have to do that," Nia said quietly. "I can handle your mother's disapproval." "Maybe you can," James said, kneeling down to help her pick up the crystal pieces. "But I can't handle watching her treat you like this anymore. And I can't handle being a coward for the rest of my life." As they cleaned up the broken vase together, both of them knew that something fundamental had changed. James had drawn a line in the sand, and Victoria would never forgive him for choosing Nia's side over hers. The real battle was just beginning, and it would test everyone's strength, courage, and capacity for change. That night, Victoria Wellington sat in her bedroom, staring at her reflection in the antique mirror that had belonged to her grandmother. She had always prided herself on her ability to control situations and people. But for the first time in 30 years, she felt like she was losing her grip on her son. This cleaning girl was different from the others. She wasn't backing down, and worse, she was making James act differently too. Victoria had spent decades building walls around her son's heart, convincing him that no woman could truly love him for who. But Nia was threatening to tear down those walls, and Victoria couldn't allow that to happen. If subtle manipulation wouldn't work, she would have to try a more direct approach. The gloves were coming off, and Victoria Wellington was prepared to fight as dirty as necessary to keep her son under her control. After the crystal vase incident, Victoria's tactics became more aggressive and desperate. She realized that her usual subtle manipulation wouldn't work with Nia, who seemed immune to psychological pressure, and had somehow managed to get James to defend her. For the first time in decades, Victoria felt like she was losing control of her son, and the feeling terrified her. Within a week of James's declaration in the kitchen, Victoria began what could only be described as a campaign of harassment designed to make Nia's life unbearable. She started by changing Nia's schedule without notice, calling the cleaning company to request that Nia come at different times when James wouldn't be home. When that didn't work, she began following Nia around the house, criticizing every aspect of her work. "You missed a spot on the mirror in the guest bathroom," Victoria would say, pointing to an area that was perfectly clean. "And the books in the library aren't properly aligned. My late husband was very particular about the organization of his collection." Nia would simply nod and make the corrections without complaint, but the constant scrutiny was exhausting. Victoria seemed to have an endless supply of imaginary problems that needed immediate attention, always delivered with a tone that suggested Nia was either incompetent or lazy. The harassment extended beyond work-related criticism. Victoria began making comments about Nia's appearance, her background, and her education that were designed to make her feel inferior and out of place in the elegant surroundings of the Wellington estate. "I hope you don't mind me saying," Victoria said one Thursday afternoon as Nia cleaned the formal dining room, "but that hairstyle is quite urban. In this house, we prefer a more refined aesthetic. Perhaps you could consider something more appropriate for your work environment." Nia paused in her dusting and turned to face Victoria directly. Mrs. Wellington, my hair is clean, neat, and pulled back so it doesn't interfere with my work. I'm not sure what more refinement you're looking for. I'm simply trying to help you understand the standards we maintain here, Victoria replied with false sweetness. This isn't Brooklyn, dear. Different environments require different presentations. You're right, Naya said calmly. This isn't Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, people judge you by your character and your work ethic, not by whether your hair meets their personal preferences. Victoria's eyes flashed with anger at being challenged so directly, but before she could respond, James walked into the dining room. He had been arriving home earlier and staying later, clearly trying to be present whenever Nia was working. Good afternoon, ladies, James said, looking between his mother and Nia with the wary expression of someone who knew he was interrupting a tense conversation. How's everything going? Everything's fine, Nia said quickly. I was just finishing up in here. Actually, James, I'm glad you're here, Victoria said, seizing the opportunity to create drama. I was trying to explain to Nia that we have certain expectations about professional appearance in our home. I suggested that she might consider a more suitable hairstyle for her work environment. James looked at Nia's neat ponytail, then at his mother with confusion. Her hair looks perfectly professional to me. What exactly is the problem? Well, you know how important image is in our social circle, Victoria said, trying to make her racism sound like reasonable business advice. When we have guests, they notice everything about the staff. We want to make sure everyone represents the Wellington family appropriately. Nia isn't representing the Wellington family, James said firmly. She's representing herself, and she does that with dignity and professionalism every day. I don't want to hear any more comments about her appearance, Mother. It's inappropriate, and it's making me uncomfortable. After James left the room, Victoria stared at Nia with undisguised hostility. The mask of polite concern had completely slipped away, revealing the ugly prejudice underneath. You think you're very clever, don't you? Victoria said, her voice low and venomous. Getting my son to defend you, making him think you're some kind of victim. But I know what you're really doing. I've seen your type before. My type? Nia asked, setting down her cleaning cloth and facing Victoria fully. For the first time since she had started working at the house, she looked genuinely angry. Don't play innocent with me, Victoria sneered. You're a gold digger, just like all the others. You think if you can get James to feel sorry for you, you can work your way into his bed and then into his bank account. But I won't let that happen. Nia was quiet for a long moment, studying Victoria's face with an expression that was both sad and disappointed. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but filled with emotion. Mrs. Wellington, I feel sorry for you. You're so afraid of losing your son's love that you can't see when someone genuinely cares about him. You're so consumed with protecting your money that you've forgotten that some things in life can't be bought or stolen. Your son is a good man, and he deserves better than a mother who judges people by their race and their bank account. Victoria's face turned red with rage. How dare you lecture me about my own son? You've been working here for a month, and you think you know anything about our family? You're nothing but hired help, and you need to remember your place. My place, Nia said calmly, is wherever I choose to stand with dignity and self-respect. And right now, that place is in your house, doing my job, and treating everyone I meet with kindness, even when they don't return the favor. The confrontation was interrupted by the sound of footsteps in the hallway. James appeared in the doorway, followed by a tall, distinguished black man in an expensive suit. James's face was bright with excitement, but his expression changed when he saw the tension between his mother and Nia. Mother, Nia, I'd like you to meet Dr. Marcus Thompson, James said, clearly trying to lighten the mood. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon at Mount Sinai, and he's interested in partnering with our foundation on a new children's hospital project. Dr. Thompson stepped forward with a warm smile and extended his hand to Victoria. Mrs. Wellington, it's a pleasure to meet you. James has told me so much about your charitable work in the community. Victoria forced a smile and shook his hand, but Nia could see the discomfort in her posture. Having to be polite to a successful black man in her own home was clearly challenging Victoria's racist worldview. Dr. Thompson, this is Nia, James continued. She helps maintain the house. Nia noticed the slight hesitation in James's introduction and understood that he was trying to protect both her and Dr. Thompson from his mother's potential rudeness. But Dr. Thompson surprised everyone by looking directly at Nia with genuine interest. Nia Thompson, he said, reading her name tag. Are you related to the Thompson family from Crown Heights? I grew up there before medical school. My cousin Marcus lives in Crown Heights, Nia said, surprised by the connection. Marcus Thompson Jr. He's a high school math teacher. Dr. Thompson's face lit up with recognition. Little Marcus is your cousin? I went to school with his father. This is incredible. Your family has such a strong tradition of education and community service. Marcus Sr. was one of my mentors when I was deciding whether to pursue medicine. As Dr. Thompson and Nia talked about their shared connections, James watched with fascination. He had never seen Nia interact with someone from her own community, and he was struck by how her entire demeanor changed. She became more animated, more relaxed, more genuinely herself. It made him realize how much effort she had been putting into maintaining her professional composure in the face of his mother's hostility. Victoria, meanwhile, was becoming increasingly agitated as she watched the warm interaction between Dr. Thompson and Nia. The idea that this cleaning girl had family connections to a prominent surgeon challenged everything Victoria believed about social hierarchies and racial stereotypes. "Well, this is all very interesting," Victoria interrupted coldly. "But I'm sure Dr. Thompson has more important things to discuss than family connections with the help." Dr. Thompson's smile faded slightly, and he looked at Victoria with the kind of careful assessment that successful black professionals learn to use when confronted with racism in polite society. "Actually, Mrs. Wellington," he said calmly, "I've always found that family connections and community ties are among the most important things in life. Success means very little if you don't have people who know where you came from and who you really are." James felt a surge of respect for Dr. Thompson's graceful handling of his mother's rudeness, but he could also see that Victoria was becoming more hostile by the minute. The presence of two intelligent, accomplished black people in her home was challenging every racist assumption she had built her worldview around. "Perhaps we should move to my study to discuss the hospital project," James suggested, trying to diffuse the tension before it got worse. As the men left the dining room, Dr. Thompson paused and turned back to Nia. "It was wonderful meeting you. Please give my regards to your cousin when you see him. And remember, you come from good people. Don't let anyone make you forget that." After they left, Victoria and Nia were alone again, but something had fundamentally changed. Victoria had just witnessed Nia being treated with respect and genuine warmth by a man whose social status and professional accomplishments she couldn't dismiss or diminish. For the first time, she was forced to confront the possibility that her racist assumptions might be wrong. But instead of leading to self-reflection, this realization only made Victoria more desperate and dangerous. If she couldn't defeat Nia by attacking her background or her character, she would have to find another way. And Victoria Wellington always found a way to get what she wanted, no matter who got hurt in the process. That evening, as Nia finished her work and prepared to leave, she found James waiting for her by the front door. His expression was serious, and she could see the conflict in his eyes. "Nia, I want to apologize for my mother's behavior today," he said quietly. "And I want you to know that her opinions don't reflect how I feel about you or your family." "I know that," Nia said softly. "But James, you need to understand something. Your mother isn't going to stop. This isn't just about me being a cleaning person in her house. This is about something much deeper, and it's going to get worse before it gets better." James nodded, knowing she was right. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to decide what kind of man you want to be," Nia said, her voice gentle but firm. "Because that decision is going to determine everything that happens next." Nia's words echoed in James's mind for days. Decide what kind of man you want to be. The challenge forced James to confront truths about himself that he had been avoiding for 38 years. He had spent his entire adult life trying to balance his mother's expectations with his own desires, always choosing the path of least resistance when conflicts arose. Every woman he had ever cared about had paid the price for his cowardice, and he was tired of being the kind of man who let fear make his decisions. The following Monday, James made a shocking decision. Instead of returning to his Manhattan office, he announced that he would be working from the Hampton house indefinitely. He set up a temporary office in the library and made it clear that he intended to be present whenever Nia was working. Victoria was furious but tried to hide her anger behind concern. "James, darling, don't you think it's important to be present in the office? Your competitors will see this as weakness." "My business runs perfectly well whether I'm in Manhattan or the Hamptons," James replied calmly. "Besides, I've been meaning to spend more time at home." What James didn't say was that he was falling in love with Nia Thompson. Their conversations had evolved from polite small talk to deep discussions about life, dreams, and values. He learned that she was working her way through nursing school while volunteering at a free clinic in Brooklyn on weekends. She told him about her grandmother, who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 8. She shared her dream of opening a community health center that would serve low-income families with dignity. In return, James found himself opening up about his own struggles. He told Nia about the pressure of living up to his father's legacy, about the loneliness of never knowing if people liked him for himself or his money, about the guilt he felt over his mother's racist behavior. "You know what I admire most about you?" Nia said one Wednesday afternoon as they sat in the garden. "You're willing to examine your own behavior and change it. That takes courage." I don't feel very courageous, James admitted. I feel like I've been a coward my whole life. Courage isn't about never being afraid, Nia said gently. It's about doing the right thing even when you are afraid, and you're doing that now. Their relationship was deepening, but so was Victoria's desperation. She had tried manipulation, harassment, and direct confrontation, but nothing seemed to drive Nia away. If anything, her attacks were bringing James and Nia closer together. Victoria decided it was time for drastic measures. She began researching Nia's background, hiring a private investigator to dig up anything damaging. She also started spreading carefully crafted rumors designed to destroy Nia's reputation. I heard the most interesting thing at the country club today, Victoria mentioned casually during dinner one Thursday evening. Apparently, there's been talk about a cleaning person getting too familiar with wealthy clients. The story is that she's been using her position to gain access to personal information and social connections. James looked up from his plate, his eyes narrowing. Are you talking about Nia? I'm simply sharing what I heard, Victoria said innocently. Of course, I defended her character, but you know how people talk. Once rumors start spreading in our social circle, they take on a life of their own. Then maybe you should stop spreading them, James said coldly. Because I know you well enough to know that these rumors didn't start by accident. Victoria's mask of innocence slipped for just a moment. James, I'm trying to protect you. This girl has clearly targeted you because of your wealth and social position. What I see, James said, standing up from the table, is a woman who treats everyone with kindness and respect, even when they don't deserve it. What I see is someone who works 2 jobs to put herself through school and still finds time to volunteer at a free clinic. You're infatuated, Victoria said dismissively. It will pass, just like all the others. No, Mother, James said quietly. This is different. Nia is different. And I'm different when I'm with her. For the first time in my life, I feel like I can be myself without pretending or apologizing. Victoria's face went pale as she realized her worst fears were coming true. James wasn't just attracted to Nia. He was genuinely in love with her. All of Victoria's schemes had failed to prevent the one thing she had spent decades trying to avoid. The next Friday, Victoria's desperation reached a breaking point. She had received a report from her private investigator that contained nothing damaging about Nia's character. In fact, the report painted a picture of a young woman who was universally respected in her community, academically excellent, and known for her volunteer work. Unable to find ammunition against Nia's character, Victoria decided to create a crisis that would force James to choose. She began experiencing what appeared to be heart problems, chest pains, shortness of breath, and fainting spells that seemed to occur whenever James was paying attention to Nia. The first episode happened on a Friday afternoon when James and Nia were talking in the garden. Victoria suddenly appeared on the terrace, clutching her chest and calling for help. James rushed to her side while Nia called 911, and by the time paramedics arrived, Victoria was claiming that stress from family conflicts was affecting her health. The doctor said I need to avoid stress and maintain a calm environment, Victoria told James when they returned from the hospital. He's concerned that emotional upheaval could trigger a more serious cardiac event. James felt trapped between his growing love for Nia and his fear of being responsible for his mother's health problems. But Nia, who had training in basic medical care from her nursing program, began to notice inconsistencies in Victoria's symptoms. James, Nia said carefully one evening after Victoria had experienced another convenient episode, has your mother ever had heart problems before? Not that I know of, James admitted. But she's 62, and stress can cause health issues. That's true, Nia said thoughtfully. But I've noticed that her symptoms seem to occur at very specific times, and they don't quite match what I learned about cardiac episodes in my medical training. When James suggested that Victoria get a second opinion from a cardiologist, she became defensive and angry. Are you questioning my medical care now? Victoria demanded. First you choose a cleaning girl over your own mother, and now you're suggesting that I'm lying about my health? Victoria realized that her fake health crisis was backfiring. If she agreed to see a cardiologist, her deception would be exposed. If she refused, James would become suspicious. She decided to escalate the situation even further. The following Monday, Victoria arranged for Nia to discover what appeared to be a valuable piece of jewelry in the library trash can. A diamond bracelet that Victoria claimed was missing from her jewelry box. When Nia found the bracelet and immediately brought it to Victoria, instead of being grateful, Victoria accused her of stealing it and then returning it to avoid suspicion. This is exactly what I was afraid of, Victoria announced dramatically when James arrived home that evening. I found evidence that Nia has been going through my personal belongings. When I confronted her about my missing bracelet, she suddenly found it in the trash. James looked at Nia, who stood quietly with her cleaning supplies, her face calm but her eyes filled with hurt. Is that what happened? I found the bracelet in the library trash can and brought it directly to your mother, Nia said simply. I thought she would want to know that something valuable had accidentally been thrown away. Accidentally? Victoria laughed bitterly. How convenient. Tell me, how exactly does a diamond bracelet accidentally end up in the trash? I don't know, Nia admitted. But I wasn't the one who put it there. James looked between the two women he cared most about in the world, and for the first time, he saw the situation clearly. His mother's accusations were becoming more desperate and less believable. Her health problems seemed to come and go based on convenience rather than medical reality. Most importantly, he realized that he trusted Nia's word more than his mother's. Mother, James said quietly, I need you to be honest with me. Did you put that bracelet in the trash can yourself? Victoria's face went white with shock and rage. How dare you accuse me of such a thing? I'm your mother. I would never lie to you. But you would lie about Nia, James said, the pieces finally falling into place. You've been lying about her from the beginning, haven't you? The broken vase, the missed cleaning spots, the rumors at the country club. It's all been fabricated to drive her away. James, you're being manipulated, Victoria said desperately. Can't you see what she's doing to our family? What I see, James said, his voice steady but filled with pain, is that the person who's been manipulating me is the one person I should have been able to trust completely. For the first time in 30 years, Victoria Wellington realized that she had pushed too far. Her son was looking at her with disappointment and disgust, and she knew that their relationship would never be the same. But instead of backing down, Victoria's racism and desperation drove her to make one final, devastating attack. Fine, Victoria said, her voice cold and venomous. If you want to throw away everything our family stands for, if you want to destroy your reputation for a black cleaning girl, then you'll have to do it without me. Choose her, James, but know that you're choosing to lose your mother forever. Victoria's ultimatum hung in the air like a death sentence. For 38 years, James had never directly defied his mother, and the weight of this moment felt crushing. But as he looked at Nia standing there with quiet dignity despite being falsely accused of theft, something fundamental shifted inside him. You're right, Mother, James said slowly, his voice growing stronger with each. I am making a choice. I'm choosing love over hate, truth over manipulation, and the future over the past. If that means losing you, then that's a price I'm willing to pay. Victoria's face went through a series of emotions: shock, rage, and finally, something that looked almost like fear. For the first time in decades, she was losing control of the situation and the person she had manipulated for so long. You'll regret this, Victoria said, her voice shaking with fury. When this little gold digger shows her true colors, when she takes your money and breaks your heart, don't come crying to me. Nia isn't a gold digger, James said firmly. She's the most honest, hardworking, compassionate person I've ever met. She's everything I want in a partner, and everything you taught me to value. Except you never actually believed those values applied to everyone. Victoria stormed out of the foyer, her heels clicking angrily against the marble floor. They heard her bedroom door slam shut with enough force to rattle the windows. James turned to Nia, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation. Her eyes were filled with tears, but her expression was one of pride rather than sadness. Are you okay? James asked, moving closer to her. I should be asking you that question, Nia said softly. You just chose me over your own mother. That couldn't have been easy. It was the easiest decision I've ever made, James replied, taking her hands in his. Nia, I love you. I should have said it weeks ago, but I was afraid. I'm not afraid anymore. I love you too, Nia whispered. And when James kissed her, it felt like the first honest moment of his entire life. Over the next few days, Victoria remained locked in her room, refusing to come out for meals or speak to anyone. The household staff walked on eggshells, unsure how to handle the unprecedented family drama. James tried several times to talk to his mother, but she wouldn't open her door or respond to his knocks. On Thursday evening, James and Nia were having dinner in the garden when they heard a loud crash from inside the house, followed by a scream. They rushed inside to find Victoria at the bottom of the main staircase, her leg twisted at an unnatural angle and her face pale with pain. Mother! James cried, dropping to his knees beside her. Don't move! We need to call an ambulance! But Nia was already there, her nursing training taking over as she quickly assessed Victoria's condition. Mrs. Wellington, can you tell me where it hurts? Can you wiggle your toes? Victoria looked up at Nia through tears of pain and confusion. The young woman she had spent weeks trying to destroy was now gently checking her pulse and speaking to her with professional calm and genuine concern. My leg, Victoria gasped. I think it's broken. I was coming downstairs and I missed a step. Nia carefully examined Victoria's leg without moving it, then looked at James. I think she's right about the break, but it doesn't appear to be a compound fracture. We need to keep her still and warm until the paramedics arrive. As they waited for the ambulance, Nia stayed by Victoria's side, monitoring her vital signs and talking to her in soothing tones to keep her calm. She covered Victoria with a blanket from the living room and held her hand when the pain became overwhelming. "Why are you helping me?" Victoria asked weakly. "After everything I've done to you." "Because you're hurt and you need help," Nia said simply. "That's what decent people do for each other, regardless of their differences." Victoria stared at Nia for a long moment, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time. This young woman wasn't the manipulative gold digger Victoria had imagined. She was exactly what James had said: honest, compassionate, and genuinely good. At the hospital, doctors confirmed that Victoria had broken her leg in 2 places and would need surgery to repair the damage. She would be in the hospital for several days, followed by weeks of physical therapy and recovery at home. During Victoria's surgery, James and Nia sat in the waiting room, holding hands and talking quietly about the future. They had been through so much together in such a short time, and their relationship had been tested in ways that most couples never experience. "Are you sure about this?" Nia asked. "About us? Your mother may never accept me, and that's going to be difficult for you." "I'm sure about you," James said firmly. "And I think my mother is going to surprise us both. What you did tonight, taking care of her after everything she put you through, that meant something to her." I could see it in her eyes. When Victoria woke up from surgery, she found James and Nia sitting beside her hospital bed. Her leg was in a cast, and she felt groggy from the anesthesia, but her mind was clearer than it had been in weeks. "How are you feeling?" Nia asked, adjusting Victoria's blanket and checking her water pitcher. "Like I've been hit by a truck," Victoria admitted. "But alive, thanks to you." "The paramedics did all the real work," Nia said modestly. "I just kept you company until they arrived." Victoria was quiet for a long moment, studying Nia's face. "You could have just called 911 and waited for help to arrive. You didn't have to stay with me, comfort me, hold my hand. Not after the way I treated you." "Yes, I did," Nia said gently. "Because that's who I am. That's who my grandmother raised me to be. She always said that how we treat people in their worst moments shows who we really are inside." Tears began to flow down Victoria's cheeks. Not tears of pain, but tears of shame and recognition. "I've been terrible to you. Absolutely terrible. I accused you of things you didn't do. I tried to destroy your reputation. I made your life miserable for no reason other than my own prejudice and fear." "Mrs. Wellington," Nia began, but Victoria held up her hand. "Please let me finish. I need to say this." Victoria took a shaky breath. "I've spent 30 years trying to control my son's life because I was afraid of losing him. When his father died, James became the most important thing in my world, and I convinced myself that no woman would ever be good enough for him. But the truth is, I was afraid that if he found real love, he wouldn't need me anymore." James leaned forward in his chair. "Mother, you'll always be important to me. Having Nia in my life doesn't change that." "I know that now," Victoria said, looking directly at Nia. "And I know that any woman who would take care of her enemy the way you took care of me tonight is exactly the kind of person my son should spend his life with." Over the following weeks, as Victoria recovered from her surgery, something miraculous happened. The 3 of them began to form a real family, built on honesty, respect, and genuine affection rather than manipulation and control. Victoria apologized not just to Nia, but to James for years of interfering in his relationships and trying to control his life. She admitted that her racism had been learned from her own family, and that she had never questioned those beliefs until she met Nia. "I always told myself I was protecting James from women who only wanted his money," Victoria confessed one afternoon as Nia helped her with her physical therapy exercise. "But the truth is, I was the one who couldn't see past wealth and status to recognize genuine love." Nia, for her part, showed Victoria the same grace and forgiveness that she had shown throughout their conflict. She helped with Victoria's recovery, shared stories about her own family and background, and gradually helped Victoria understand that people's worth had nothing to do with their race or social status. "You know," Victoria said one evening as the 3 of them sat together in the living room, "I think I owe apologies to several other young women who tried to be part of this family over the years." "It's never too late to make amends," Nia said gently, "and it's never too late to change." 6 months after Victoria's accident, James and Nia were married in a beautiful ceremony in the garden of the Wellington estate. Victoria not only attended the wedding, she walked Nia down the aisle in place of the father Nia had lost so many years earlier. "I may not have given birth to you," Victoria whispered to Nia as they approached the altar where James waited. "But I couldn't be prouder to call you my daughter." The wedding was attended by people from all walks of life. James's business associates, Nia's nursing school friends, Dr. Marcus Thompson and his family, and even some of Victoria's society friends who had learned to see beyond their own prejudices. As James and Nia exchanged vows, Victoria sat in the front row with tears of joy streaming down her face. She had almost lost her son by trying to hold onto him too tightly. But by learning to let go, she had gained not just a daughter-in-law, but a chance to become the person she had always claimed to be. During the reception, Victoria stood up to give a speech that surprised everyone who knew her. "I want to tell you all a story," Victoria began, her voice strong and clear. 3 years ago, I thought I knew what was best for my son. I thought I knew what kind of woman deserved to be part of our family. I was wrong about everything, and my ignorance almost cost me the two people I love most in this world." She looked directly at Nia, who was beaming in her wedding dress. "Nia Thompson Wellington didn't just teach my son how to love. She taught me how to love without conditions, how to see people for who they really are, and how to be a better person than I ever thought possible." The applause was thunderous, but Victoria wasn't finished. "To anyone who has ever been judged by the color of their skin rather than the content of their character, I want you to know that change is possible. Love is stronger than hate, and it's never too late to choose to be better." As the evening ended and the newlyweds prepared to leave for their honeymoon, Victoria pulled them both aside for a private moment. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I didn't deserve your patience or your love." "Family doesn't give up on family," Nia said, embracing Victoria warmly. "And we're family now, for better or worse." Looking back, James realized that his mother had been right about one thing. Nia Thompson had completely changed their family, but not in the way Victoria had feared. She had changed them for the better, proving that love really could conquer hate, and that sometimes the people we think are our enemies are actually the angels we need to help us become who we're meant to be.